and it's lucky number 13. This is the 13 in a row that I've done.
Hey,
and
that's great.
yeah, it's not bad, right? You remember, Dave, on the very first one, which you were on, I said we'll see how we go and see if I've got the mental strength to do this weekly. So far, it's been yes. So yeah, awesome to have Bruce and Dave on again for part 2. I think there was obviously a lot of stuff we didn't get to last time, and a lot of requests to have the two legends back on again. So it's awesome to see you guys again.
The legends.
The legends, yeah.
Well, wow. You remember there were only 2, right? Not 3 last time. So,
That's right.
Yeah, you got excluded.
I did, and it was Robert. I think, here we go. Robert's here. I'm pretty sure it was Robert here. Hey, Robert, you were the one that said that, and you've been apologising to me ever since, which is not necessary. So how's everyone doing? Dave, Bruce, what's happening?
Everything's wonderful.
Yeah, it's fine.
Life is great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We're doing NAMM.
Are you?
Right. Oh boy, yes.
Let's talk about that for a second. What does it involve? It's not going to be at the same scale as last time, I'd imagine.
A miniature version.
Awesome.
Scale down, like a couple meeting rooms and like a 10 by 20 area. So way scaled down.
Cool.
But
that's cool.
I think the whole show is, so
we're doing it. So
yeah.
Well, I mean, there was a meeting room last year for Boutique, and that was cool. But I mean, I was even looking at it like, well, if you have the meeting room anyway, you could have had this little section of booth next to it. Just had a small little display of some things.
Yeah.
Doing it small is a lot easier than doing it on the scale that we used to do it.
Yeah.
It's not too bad.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I found out by accident that we're doing NAMM, and so now we're doing NAMM. No one told me, actually.
Yeah. Nice. You were just expected to be there, Dave.
Well, no one said that, but I'm going to be there.
Will there be?
Do
you think there'll be some new product release from Boutique Amps or yourself for the show? Hard to know.
Yeah, we're showing the Plexi amp.
Wow.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Or the tentative Plex.
Plex, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the name. That should absolutely what it should be called. That's awesome. So when is NAMM, Dave? It's in January, is it?
End of January, yep.
End of January.
Very last weekend in January. So the 2020, I don't know what that is. That's the I can tell you
something here.
It is the 24th through 28th. No, 25th through 28th. Sorry.
Okay, good to know.
Yep.
Okay.
All under control there, Bruce?
Yeah, my power supply. Go ahead, pretend I'm not here.
No, it's all you're still super clear. Everything's all good at this end. So.
Yeah, except my power is not connecting. Oh.
Okay, no problem. So we've got a bunch of questions in the chat. I'm going to get to them in a second. The first question I always ask when Dave's on.
Oh. And
Bruce, I'm going to ask you this question too, actually.
Okay.
What mods have you been working on this week? And I guess for you, Bruce, the question is, do you still do mods?
As in modifications?
Yeah, people sending your amps to
mod. Yeah, I still. In fact, I'm custom building an amp for a guy along with all the other things that I'm supposed to be doing.
Cool.
He had one of the class amps, 20 watt, and he has one, and he wanted 2 channels. So I'll have to get to that after I do a couple other guys first, but
That's cool.
Oh, no,
in terms of the mods, Bruce, do you tend to favor a particular, a particular amplifier or brand or whatever? You only want people to send you stuff that you've built, or designed, or will you take, Marshall stuff in, or?
Oh, I'll do anything they'll pay me to do, of course, I don't do as much modification stuff now. There's a lot of repair stuff and a lot of repair stuff.
Yep.
It's like the old days.
Yeah.
It's bills though, right?
Yeah, I don't want them, but what am I going to do? I can't send them to somebody else. There's nobody to send them to. So
people need help, and it can be hard to say no, right?
That is a good point. There's almost no one to send it to there.
Yeah.
Well, there are a few guys, but they're either nuts or
Dan Russell? Dan Russell.
Yeah, he's a little nuts. I like Dan, but he's
good.
Yeah, he can be unpredictable. And Dean Zink, and there's a few other guys around, but they got old and moody. So you don't know which guy you're going to get when you walk in there that day.
What is it? I hear that a lot from the guys that have come in to give me stuff to work on, and I often end up having a chat. Right, one of the things I've found working in this industry is that, unlike, I guess, if you're a plumber or an electrician or whatever, you're actually working on things that people are really passionate about. It's their hobby, it's their pastime or whatever. So whenever someone comes in for the first time, or even on, even a customer who's been in a bunch of times, they always want to have a chat. Yeah. Sometimes a lengthy chat. But one of the things that often gets raised is just what you said, Bruce, which is that a lot of the a lot of the other techs around can be very unpredictable.
Yeah. Well, they got old and crotchety. Now
So
they're really picky. With a lot of them won't even touch an amp with a circuit board. Now it's like
Oh, that's Dan Russell.
Well, Dan and Dean Zink.
Oh, he won't either.
He won't look at a 5150. They get to where if it's not easy, they don't want to work on it. So.
No.
Oh well, so it ends up here, and then I do.
So then you just charge more money, and you're all good.
Yeah. Make it worthwhile. That's it.
And they can't be in a hurry, and
make it worthwhile, and
so that's fine.
How about you, Dave? Any interesting mods this week or amplifiers that are worth mentioning?
No, I was working on one amplifier for like an entire week because I was just getting picky about it, and it was irritating me. It wasn't quite right. And
this is the one you talked to me about a few days ago, and you said you were still not quite.
Yeah, but I finished it, so it's sitting ready to go in its cardboard box back to the guy. So
awesome, awesome. All right. I'm going to get into some
of
the
stuff. I've been a little
stuff.
Unproductive lately. I've been doing some other stuff for Friedman and stuff. So I was like,
okay.
Some of the stuff here has sat.
Yeah.
There's a lot of amps here that have sat for longer than I'd like to even admit.
Yeah.
But
well,
Yeah. Actually, I am working on it. Now we're finally getting the IE4s done. Not out the door, but we're close. And also these kits that we're going to do.
Oh yeah,
are kind of cranking up, and
cool.
Got our little. We have to make our little video. Anyway, you knew what we talked about that.
Oh yeah. So that'll be great, Bruce.
But everything takes so long when you don't know what you're doing, especially. So.
Well, there's no one to show you.
You should know what you're doing by now.
Well, I mean, making movies and
making videos,
and it's like I don't know.
Yeah, that's one of the things that this is the good thing about live streaming is that there's no editing that's required.
Thank God.
Because anyone who's tried it, video editing will know it's the most time consuming and frustrating thing you'll ever do.
Yeah,
it's a nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we've got Ben in the chat here. Hey Ben, looking forward to Bruce and Dave. Is there a Tone Talk show tomorrow, Dave?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, I didn't think so either.
I don't
looked
believe
it up.
So.
When I saw the question, I had a look before. Didn't say.
Yeah, no, I'm the one that sometimes has to look at my own, our own social media to know when my show is.
You just wait for the 30-minute reminder on YouTube.
Yeah, no, not that, but but yeah,
live in 30 minutes, Tone Talk. And you're like, what?
Wait, who's on? When? What? No, we'll have 2 back-to-back weeks towards the end of the month.
Okay, that'll be
Warren
cool.
Hewart.
Oh yeah,
Produce like a pro.
guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Nolly from the Get Good Drums.
Oh yeah,
he plays in Periphery also. Yeah,
I know. Does he have a bunch of IR? Packs and all that kind of stuff as well.
IR packs and drum software and programming.
I think his stuff is included. I think Neural DSP are including a bunch of his stuff in their products. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, you can't rely on music anymore, right? To make the money.
This is right, man.
Yeah.
This is not that I'm, a musician in that regard, but yeah, everyone says it, right?
It's funny. My grandfather, when I was little, he said to me, he used to call me Babe. I have no idea why, but he said, Babe, he said, be the guy. He says, don't be the guy that digs the ditches. Be the guy that makes the shovels.
Right.
It's like,
yes.
Okay. Like when I was 8 years old, and I still remember it, 65 years later. So
yeah, I like that saying. It's a good one. It reminds me of another one actually, which is we used to say this in my old working life when we're a software company, and we built software for an industry that we weren't in. Like we built software for others to use, and we used to say we build shovels, but we don't dig holes.
Yeah, same thing.
Right? You don't want to be digging the holes, man. Ben's saying, Jason, you need to show Mark how to turn on subscriber only chat. I think Mark's doing that now, isn't he, Dave, on Tone Talk? Subscriber only?
No.
Okay.
I don't know if we want to
talk about it. I'm on the fence about it because it's like, are you excluding people or making people subscribe? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. There might come a time when if we have something really special, maybe we do subscribers only or something, Or if we, I don't know.
Anyone can listen. It's just a question of whether they want to put a comment in the chat.
Maybe we get more subscribers. Maybe we don't. I don't know.
You could try. You can do it on a show-by-show basis. The other thing, Dave, that Mark and I have been talking about a couple of times is getting Mark on here for an Ask Mark show.
What are you going to ask Mark?
Oh, man, I've got a whole bunch of questions. You can come too and ask him some stuff.
That should be interesting.
We should do it for sure. We've got a question. We're straight into an IRX question, Dave. I'm sorry, mate.
Oh, God.
Hats off to everyone. Question to Dave. I have an IRX and an H90. That'll be the Eventide. I'm running the H90 through the effects loop to preserve tone. Okay. Now, is there a switch box to run as 4-cable method as well, but mainly still H90 through the loops? I'm trying to get the exact gist of how he's setting this up.
Are you saying you want to run half the H90 in front of the IRX and the other half in the loop? Is that what you're saying? Not sure what you're saying there. Run.
So I would think so, because if you probably wouldn't. Would you run an IRX and 4-cable method with an amp? Does that make any sense? No.
No. But what he's talking about, I think, is the 4-cable method with the Eventide.
Yeah, if the H90 can do it, doesn't matter if it's an
H90 is like 2 processors in one box with separate. They can be separate
ends. Yeah.
So yeah, how that to be honest, probably the H90 in front of the IRX is going to be noisy as hell, because Eventide in their history of even their H9s, if you just put them in front of an amplifier and it's not in a true bypass mode, it's hissy. It's particularly hissy, actually, more so than other companies. Works fine in a loop, but just leave it in the loop. Get some other stuff for the front.
Yeah.
How's that answer?
I think that's a great answer. A great answer. Brad's here. Hey, man. Good to see you on here.
Hey,
Brad, if anyone hasn't checked out Brad's YouTube channel, Brad's Guitar Garage, I recommend you do.
Oh yeah, especially watch the Lazy J video, amp video. That one, I had to message Brad on that one.
Hilarious.
I was dying watching it. It was so funny.
Amazing.
The comments as you go along are just like, oh
god. Yeah. Ben is saying, can you have Leon Todd on? Yeah, I speak to Leon quite a lot, actually. And he is definitely has, even though he's a fractal guy, I guess you could think of him as a fractal guy, definitely has a passion for tube amps. Yeah, we'll get Leon and what's his partner in crime?
that'd be
Troy. Yeah, but you get Troy on as well. We've got a question here from Robert. So relays on a point-to-point builder are extremely difficult to use with a low noise floor. PCB construction is the way, but so many components with so many different pads. I guess it's a bit of a statement rather than a question, but I guess to Bruce and Dave, have you seen, are there still many production amps around that are turret-based or point-to-point that are still using relays in a non-PCB way?
Oh, man.
I can think of one that I know of.
Who?
Wizard.
Oh God. But they implement those so poorly.
Do they put the relay on a little circuit board?
They glue it to the chassis upside down.
Flip it upside down and glue it to the chassis. Yeah.
Neatly. He did it neatly.
Yeah,
but
it's neat. Yeah.
Very neat amps. A lot of the relay switching in those amps pop a lot and do some weird things. So it's like, I mean, we used to do things like that on a turret board, but it became dumb as things got more, as you add more channels and more things. It's one thing if it's one relay, but as you add more and more, then it's like, no. Either that or use a little daughter PC board for the relay and then wire it,
Yeah.
Like some of the ones I sent you, Dave. Those are all, handy, aren't they?
With a little, with the board for the DC heater supply.
Yeah, I haven't tested that yet, actually. Have you tried one yet?
No, but I have more of the power supplies.
Yeah, cool. So anyone
there's a
little
recom.
Yeah.
I saw this in some post about someone talking about DC heaters, and you were talking about that online. And there's a little recom makes a little part you can get from Mauser. It's a little square box, essentially. Okay. And it's a 1.6 amp supply, 12-volt supply, basically. Anywhere from 90 to 250 volts in, auto switches, and just a box. And he's got a little PC board for it. You pop it on the PC board, wire DC tube heaters all day. Relays. It's really, if you have to add something to something, it's so simple.
Okay. I just wrote it down. So
that Recon power supply, I mean, this is not it. This is a battery off my Canon camera, but it's not that much bigger than that. I mean, it's a little bit bigger, and it'll on that board. The thing about that, because it's a fully enclosed unit, and it's just got the legs on it, right? There's no easy way to mount it. So the board, the PCB board for it. There's no smarts in it, right? It's just running pads to those to the legs on the unit. But at least with the board, you've now got something to mount it on, and you can put the board on standoffs. I will be throwing that board up on the DIY online store at some point. I just want to
really cool.
Test it in one of the amps first. So that should be cool, and that'll it's an easy addition rather than having to get a separate transformer, like the guy in the group, Bruce, that you were responding to earlier today. Yeah. So yeah, people waiting for the Plexi, Dave. So that's cool. We got a question here for Bruce. What are the main power tube sockets on my Renegade amp PCB? There is positions for capacitors. Is there room for mods? Are there mods which you would do to change the amp? So where the main power tube sockets are on my Renegade amp, there's positions for capacitors. Were they set up for mods?
Be right back.
As in, there's spots for parts that aren't there. It sounds.
I think that's what Peter means. Yeah.
No, wasn't really for mods. I actually don't recall what that is. I have no idea. To answer the question, no, it's not really there for modifications, but I don't know what those are. When you design stuff, you make a circuit board and you build it, and then you go, oh, that was dumb, I don't need these parts. You don't necessarily redo the board, you just don't put the parts in.
Yep.
That may have been what happened. That we haven't made those for 15 years, or however long ago it was. So,
are there any other common mods for that amp, Bruce, that you can recall?
For the Renegade?
Yeah.
God. Nothing specific. I don't think I've ever modified one. Most people that have them and they still work usually like them, and I've never been asked to modify anything on a Renegade, actually.
It was because perfect straight out of the factory, wasn't it, Bruce?
I guess. I don't know. Yeah, that's it.
Of course, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blake saying, yeah, love these chats, Jason. Thanks, man. No worries. Everyone hit the thumbs up. Yeah, please do that. Now, there is a question here, Bruce, from Blake again. Forgive me if this has been asked already. Is Bruce offering the kits yet? So maybe you talk about where that's at and when they might be available, Bruce.
We are doing them. We actually have a bunch of orders for them, but we can do as many as we want. So it's kind of open-ended. But like everything, we are behind. In fact, I just sent an email out to everybody that has one on order and told them it'll be more like end of January, and everybody was like, oh, okay, that's cool. So yes, Blake can email me and I'll send him the information.
Cool. There are some comments in the chat here about Dean Zink being that must be the guy you were talking about before. Yeah. I don't know Dean, so
unstable.
I can't
Unstable. Interesting.
He slammed my MiG 50 down on his table because I changed the knobs. Well, that's not good.
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah, doesn't sound good. Freddie's asking, hello, legends. Why don't we see much digital control of analog gear these days? I mean, like gain, EQ. So I think we're talking about digital control of pots. And would this be a good way to implement, or what would be a good way to implement it in an amp?
Oh.
Well, nowadays you don't have to, but motorized pots were always a thing, and they're so complicated and so expensive and so slow that it never really
got traction, has it?
No. There were some decent ones, but still that never worked. And the thing is to control. I mean, Boogie did it with the tri-axis and 400 LDRs, but to control high signal levels like that, you can't use conventional parts. You can't use
Digital
little VCA chips and stuff that operate that are just op amp stuff. So in fact, years ago, I never did it. In fact, I think I talked to, was it John Oram? I don't know, one of those guys. Talked to him about a high voltage VCA that could handle 50 volt signal levels as opposed to 10 volts on a solid state stuff. But it never happened, and I never did it, and well, that was the end of that. So the difficulty is the signal level.
Yeah.
So you can't use normal stuff. So there you go. Why don't people do it? Because it's hard.
This is hard and expensive. Yeah.
And now with modeling and all that stuff, it's like, I don't know. Is it?
I think you're right. I think if someone's wanting to store presets down to that level, go and use your Axifex or your Quad Cortex or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff out there that'll do all the switching and multi-channels and all that stuff, and that probably for a tube amp guy is probably enough.
Yeah.
What else we got here, guys? There you go. 75 YBA says, Bruce, Dave and Marty have an excellent reputation around Detroit. You're all gems.
Thank you.
Well,
yeah.
Thanks.
I'm not even there.
Dave's not here, but yeah, he's
maybe one day.
He's
question
from here.
From sorry, Bruce.
No, you can claim you're from here,
Yeah.
Question here from Bruce FU. He has a super lead that seems to be muddy, especially on the low strings. Is this a symptom of tubes wearing out?
Well, if it used to sound okay and now it doesn't, possibly.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. I don't suggest you go out and spend $400 on all new tubes when all it needs is a little tweak on a coupling cap or something like that. But it can be, maybe.
The real question is, did it sound good before?
Yeah, well, that's the key. That's the key thing, right? And if it's always sounded like this, my guess is that someone's clipped the bright cap, which seems to be
not even the
most
bright
common.
cap, not even the bright cap, but the in general the what's the circuit in the amp? A super lead.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, let's start with that.
You know, you could have 1,000 different specs under super lead. Maybe there's no bright cap in there. Maybe it's a super bass front end. Maybe it's, if it's super bass front end, it's going to be muddy.
Yeah. And all those amps are at least 20 years old, if not more. And to imagine that nobody ever did anything to your amp would be kind of silly to believe that. So in this case, I would have somebody look at it that knows what they're doing rather than just replace tubes and hope for the best. That ain't cheap now.
Yeah. If you want to, if you're brave enough to take some pictures of the insides, you're welcome to post them in the DIY group on Facebook.
Yeah.
And you'll get some information. Well, depending on who answers the question, but I'll try.
You'll get information.
Some
of it might even always be the right information, apparently, which is a very common thing that happens to me.
I'll make sure if you post in the group, I'll try and get these two guys here.
Yeah.
That's always funny. They post in a Friedman group, or then the Bruce chimes in and goes, "Yeah, why don't you email Dave?"
How many times I've said that,
or something else. It's just like it's like, oh, it's tubes. I guarantee it's tubes. I'm like, after I find the thing, it's not tubes at all. It's this.
Always the way.
Don't retube your whole amp. Hang on.
Yeah.
The biggest thing we have lately is that like tin whiskers in the pots.
Oh yeah.
Really? You're having that?
Alphas. Tons. A lot. No. And often you can fix it if you take an air compressor and blow the pot out.
Yeah.
And then shoot it with like kind of a high velocity contact cleaner. Like I have some MC chemical contact cleaner or whatever that it comes out of there like bam, you know, like
Yeah.
and it kind of just let it wash the pot out completely, and then it'll work.
Wow.
Magic.
Yeah.
Dave, what year of amps? How many years is it taking before that's starting to happen?
New amps, old amps,
wow.
both new and old amps.
You think it's based
like
it all on
the
based it all on the climate of where the amp's located at all? Does that seem to have any influence or not?
maybe. Maybe.
Does the lead-free solder have anything to do with? Because it seemed, it's been around for 20 years, but
no, it's inside the pot shell.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's something to do with the plating that they have done, and
only on
from what I understand, Tin Whiskers is the fact that they took, when Rojas happened, they took all the lead and everything out of everything.
Right.
And then and then a lot of them just left what was left. They just took that out and left the same plating.
Yeah.
And that plating will grow. It's like cobwebs.
Yeah.
Eventually it grows tin cobwebs, which play havoc.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. There's a whole like I read up on it. There's a whole like there's a Nassau thing where they're talking about tin whiskers. They show detailed pictures of circuit boards, even with tin whiskers growing across boards and stuff.
Yeah. Now, that's why I mentioned the soldering, because back then, when Nassau discovered it, it was actually solder related, but obviously it's grown to something more. Wow.
Yeah, and then it's like kind of a lot of issues lately with that, but.
Jeez.
So we're actually looking to change pots and stuff, but it's a process.
Yeah.
It doesn't just, hey, we're changing now. It doesn't happen overnight,
we're changing this afternoon. Yeah, that's not going to happen.
Wow.
But now I have literally at the factory now I have all the pots get blown out when the amp is new, blown out, and then contact cleanered every single pot.
Brand new.
I'm just having them do it.
Even before they leave, okay.
Before they leave, can't hurt.
No,
it makes me think I should be doing the same thing now. Yeah,
I never had problems with those pots for years, and then all of a sudden it was,
Yeah,
there is I had Brad in the chat here before. I'm sure Brad's done a video where he found.
He knows about Tin Whiskers, I think. Yeah.
He
talks about it.
I don't think it was in a pot. I think it was somewhere else on the amp, but. Might have been on the board. Question here for Dave from Randall. So, Dave, I have a small box 50. My question: the BE channel of the small box compared to a BE 100, is it more like C45 on or off, fat on or off?
No, just the C45 off, the fat off. But it's ever so slightly different. The voltage divider is a little bit different than a standard BE. I mean, slightly, but it does make the difference in tone a little bit. And the coupling cap is a little bit bigger. It's a 0047 instead of a 0022.
Okay. Question here from Joe and Dave. I suspect this is a follow-on from your some points that you made on the last Tone Talk, which I watched, which is about live sound, live guitar sound, and you said no one ever said ever that a modeler sounded better than
no
in the audience, right? You remember that?
No, so it doesn't. It doesn't. Period. And this is like something we just.
I remember.
Thor and I talk about this constantly.
Yeah.
And it's like, no one ever said a modeler sounds better ever. And it's more than just the sound of the modeler. It doesn't have the same weight in when you hear it out front. Meaning like I remember Tom Abraham, sound guy, told me the one time with Keith Urban they were experimenting with this, and he goes, "Yeah, we could get it, in sound check where guitar rigs, you could A/B the guitar rigs, they were going at the same time, sounded exactly the same." And he goes, then I used it for a show. And I flipped it at the show, the guitar rig. I couldn't hear the guitar. It was like lost in the mix.
Oh.
Turn it up. Then it was too loud.
Yep.
Turn it down. Then it was too low. Just wouldn't sit right. He goes, because he couldn't get it to kind of cut through and sit in the right spot. And, you know, it's really flat sounding to me. Like a fractal is very flat sounding. It doesn't have, I mean, it can sound, yeah, you can get it pretty good, you know, but it will never sound and feel as good as the amp. It just doesn't. And you can tell live. If you ever go on a bill where there's modelers versus guys using real tube amps, it's immensely different. Same PA, same everything, same show. You're just like, what happened? It's really it's not enjoyable anymore. I don't even want to go see a show now because it's not enjoyable.
Yeah, there's an energy thing that's missing, isn't there? Like,
there's total energy that's missing. And then also without cabinets on stage and, you know, flying PAs and everything, you have, you know, if you're up front or you're close, you don't really hear anything.
Yeah.
No.
There's nothing there. There's nothing coming off the stage. There's no speakers really of mention that are pointing at you. You really have to stand back by the sound guy to hear what it sounds like.
Yeah, you do. And then that's like listening to a stereo.
And there's like Pete and I were talking, it's like there's a hole in the middle. There's nothing filling out the middle. It's just like disappeared. It's like it got there.
If you look at Joe's comment here, so, you know, I think he's talking about the combination of a modeler and IRs for the front of house, but an amp on stage to fill in that hole. Have you ever seen anyone play a rig like that, Dave?
Yeah. No, that happens. That happens a lot. You can do that. If you have enough volume out of the cabinets on stage, it can sound better. If you use a tube power amp to power those, it can sound better. At that point, why don't you just use a real amp?
And just mic your cabinet if you're going to have a tube amp there.
No, I mean, you know, I think there is something to be said for like maybe an IR or a model of that off your amplifier to send to the front of house because it's the same every single night all the time. It's consistent.
Yep.
I'm that's fine. There is a thing about mics though, and there's sort of a reactance with that. I remember the sound guy for the Offspring was talking about that. And they have Axe-Fx rigs, but now it's going to go into a tube power amp into cabinets on stage, and they mic the cabinets on stage and use no IRs. I'm not really sure why they're not using an amp, but okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, it's more reliable, this and that. Well, I've seen Axe-Fx's screens go blank.
Yeah, I know.
And after they travel for a while, they get beat up, and you know, it's a computer. You know, I don't know.
They do. They just like, you know,
is it
just like a computer? Sometimes they don't boot.
Yeah, that can happen. So then you carry two, and then
Dave, you know? any Synergy modules close to the Pink Taco version 2?
I mean, not exactly. B Deluxe might get kind of close. Not really exactly. The PT V2 is a little different front end. But it's the whole amp really, because the power section has no negative feedback. It's like an EL84 with no negative feedback power section. So the way the amp responds is a little different than something with negative feedback and stuff. It kind of is a whole sound, you know.
I had my first playthrough one of those, Dave, because you know one came in here and it had only probably 2 weeks ago. It had been modded. It had that really weird low pass filter thing added to the volume pot. You remember I sent you a photo of it? I don't know if you recall, but once I ripped that out,
but that was a regular ping taco though.
Yes, but
Wasn't
I think
the V2. The V2 is different.
Yeah, right. It sounded awesome though. I mean, I thought it sounded great. Once I removed that mod, as it was. There is a super chat here, so I want to hit it straight away from Stormlight Architect. Thank you. Loving the innovative feature set of the new Soldano. So that'll be the Astro 20, I guess. It's not a JEL 50 watter. When can we expect pre-orders, Dave? 50 watt with the IRX Galaxy features.
Well, that's probably not going to happen. The latter, the IRX features. When might a 50 watt happen? I don't know. It could be soon, maybe. Mum's the word.
I've listened to you enough to be able to like decode these little statements. that means soon, I think. Hey, Mark's here and he says he knows a few things. Come on, Dave. Yeah, man. Mark,
After 160 shows, yes, you probably have learned a whole bunch.
I'd be honored to have you on
160 shows.
this channel, Mark. It would be fun. We'll have a great time.
We could ask Mark all about comic books and things,
right?
That he is probably very knowledgeable at.
That's something I know nothing about.
I know nothing about it either, so that's what's going to be funny.
Mark could ask
what is a
questions
comic
of
book?
Yeah. Well, there's probably more people that would watch that than there are tube amp people, so might be a good way to grow the channel. Before we go on with the chat, Bruce, I'm going to ask you. So one of the things we chatted about before we came on air was some of the kind of the stories from the old days, and I think you mentioned Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah.
So do you want to let us know what that story is? I'd love to hear it.
I think Dave's probably heard this. But
I know. Yeah, I know what the story is for sure, but it's been said before, but I'm sure the viewers here have forgotten the word in a million years.
A million years ago, how long, when I worked at Arnold Williams Music, what was that, 40 years?
Probably early 80s or something at some point in time, or mid 80s?
I don't know. Whenever Stevie Ray Vaughan was he wasn't huge yet. Okay. And I was working at a music store in Detroit, and they called me from the Royal Oak Music Theater where he was going to play. They had some amps. They needed a repair guy to come out and work on some of his amps. Like, okay, cool. So I said, well, what do you have? You have to know what to bring with you if you're going to go fix stuff. So he said, well, we got a bunch of Fender amps and a couple other things. He goes, we got this thing called a Dumble steel string singer. And I was like, okay, no problem. I had no clue what that was. I mean, I knew what a Dumble was, and I'd worked on the Overdrive specials. I didn't know what a steel string singer was. So I I said, okay, no problem. So I got off the phone with him, and I had Howard Dumble's phone number. So I called him, and he answered the phone. So I said, hey, I'm going to a guy, and I told him who I was, and I said, I'm going to work on Stevie Ray Vaughan's equipment, and he's got this steel string singer. Can you tell me what it is so I know what to bring for service? And he starts rambling all this technical stuff, circuit descriptions, and this phase inverter buffer, this and that. And I got off the phone. It's like, interesting. He just described an SVT, an Ampeg SVT.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was like, okay. So I took what I would use for an SVT. So I go out there and I've got all my gear with me. And I don't recall the guy's name, the guitar tech. It wasn't, who's the guy everybody knows?
Cesar Diaz?
No, it wasn't him. Nice guy. At the time, I mean, had I known he was going to be famous and all that, I would have brought a camera. They hadn't invented phones yet. So, No pictures, no nothing. It was just a service call for some guy. And I said, all right, what do you got here? He goes, well, we got all this Fender stuff and these other things. And on the table in this big pile of stuff, he goes, we've got this steel string Singer amp. I said, okay. I said, what's wrong with it? And he looks up in the air and he goes, it just doesn't sound right. And it's like, what the, what does that mean to you as the repair guy? You're standing there. I said, all right, well, I said, I talked to Howard Dumble on the phone and he told me what it was. So it really should be no problem. He goes, what do you mean you talked to Howard Dumble? How did you do that? I said, I called his number and he answered the phone and told me. And this guy, the tech, he goes nuts. He starts screaming and yelling and swearing. He's like, that MFO. He goes, we paid him 2 years ago for 2 overdrive special. Is that what it was called? Yeah. He said, we paid him 2 years ago for 2 amps, and he won't even answer the phone for Stevie Ray Vaughan, and he answers the phone for you. God damn it. And he goes nuts. And he goes, I'm going to go handle this. And he leaves. So I'm standing there. It's like, okay. So I'll fix his stuff. So I go to the steel string Singer thing and I turn it around and I look and it's like, okay, this isn't like an SVT. This is an SVT. It was, an SVT has the preamp in the top and a power amp in the bottom. And this was an Ampeg SVT power amp in the bottom of the head with Dumble's preamp. He made his own preamp to go with it. But it was an SVT power amp. So I could fix it because I knew how to fix an SVT. But it was like, well, wait a minute. So apparently this is a one-of-a-kind mysterious amp that no human has ever seen except for me. I'm like, apparently I'm like the only guy that's ever seen this amp because people have asked me all kinds of stuff about it. Did you take pictures? Did you do any of this? No. It was a broken amp and I fixed it, So we did that. And then the guy comes back, the guitar tech. And I said, everything okay? He goes, yep, it's all handled. It's taken care of. I said, all right. I said, well, that steel string Singer thing is fixed. What else do you have?
What was wrong with it?
The usual power tubes. There's these 22 ohm resistors that they use for plate resistors. And when you blow a tube, you blow those. So you keep using it until you're down to like, 2 tubes. And then you start to notice it sounds bad.
Got it.
What I recall, I think that's all it was.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I mean, you're out in a place trying to fix guitar amps. So,
right. Yeah, on location.
So I said, all right, well, he goes, well, we got some more stuff. I said, all right, what else you got? And I look, and he's got his setup back then was, I think he had 6 blackface Fender combos, just a variety of amps, a Super, a Pro Reverb, all just stacked up, teetering on top of each other. And he had like a Radio Shack formed metal box, just a folded little aluminum box with a bunch of jacks on it and a bunch of those plastic cords that used to come with the wah-wahs. That box is hanging in front of these amps with these cords going off into every amp. And then on the floor is whatever the overdrive pedal was and a wah-wah. And that was it. That was the setup, plugged into 6 amps all at once. And I said, he's like, okay, well, we got this over here. He takes me to this pile of stuff. And he says, yeah, we just picked this one up. It was, was it a Super? It was like a Super Reverb with one 15-inch speaker.
Vibreverb.
What was it?
Vibreverb.
Right.
Was it?
That would be the 15-inch speaker, yeah.
Okay. Anyway, they had one of those in this pile of stuff. He goes, we just picked this up on the road. So what they used to do is buy amps while they were traveling around And they take one out of the pile and just throw another one into the pile and just plug them all in. And he says, I said, well, okay, what's wrong with it? He says, well, let me show you. And he takes his hand and he goes across all the knobs and turns everything full up. And I look and it's like, holy crap, every one of these amps, everything is just full up. Every knob, not the reverb and stuff, but on the channel, the volumes are all on 10. So he plugs in the guitar. It was the one. I didn't get to touch it, but it was, the Stevie Ray Vaughan #1 guitar, whatever it was. So he takes his hand, he goes across the knobs on the top, and he turns on the neck pickup, no left hand touching it, and just whacks the strings with his hand. And it's like, okay. He goes, how's that sound to you? I go, pretty crappy. What do you want me to do? He says, Stevie says it's got too much bass. And I said, okay, I got an idea. So I reach over and I turn down the bass knob. And he hits the guitar. He goes, that's it. Okay. And he said, but there's a problem. Stevie wants to see the knob on 10, but he wants it to sound like it's on 3. I said, okay, can we just loosen the screw on the knob and make it look like it's on 10? And he goes, no, he'll find out and he'll be really pissed at me. He says, I need you to go inside the amp and do something with a resistor or whatever and make it so when he puts it on 10, it sounds like it's on 3. So I went and did that and a bunch of other just maintenance stuff. And he also had a teetering up in the corner of all this was a Fender Vibratone. This Leslie thing. That was pretty cool too. But that was like my Stevie Ray Vaughan exposure to the, this magical, amazing tone and all that. And all it was at least live, it was just a bunch of Fender amps just turned all the way up. Didn't matter what they were. They talk about all the different special things he had done to his amps. He had 100K grid stopper resistors on the inputs. And, I've read about all these magical things that they do. It's like, I don't know, he had 6 amps all on 10 and he had just bought one at a pawn shop an hour before. It's like, Yeah. So I don't know, but that was pretty cool, and now 20 years later, people are like, well, did you get pictures? Did you do this? Did you do this? It's like, no, I didn't. It was nothing.
It's the usual thing of a great player just sounding good regardless of whatever.
Oh, he's ridiculous. He was ridiculous.
Yeah.
He was just inhuman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that
but there's interesting things about his guitar. So Dumble also told me about his guitar. So that guitar, Dumble had once told me, of course I didn't write any of it down, had once told me that he measured the pickups in that #1 guitar. And they were all pretty low on the whines. So they were all read 5.6, 5.7. Okay. So, normally you'd see them more 6.3-ish or something. So they're all on the weaker side. But then that makes sense because you have, 13 gauge strings.
Yeah.
The weaker the pickup, brighter.
Yeah.
But 13 gauge strings, darker, thicker. I always say it's a teeter-totter on this stuff. It's like
everything in balance.
It's in balance. It's like a 9 set of strings sounds way different than a 13 set of strings on a guitar,
Yeah.
Vastly different,
And he whacks it so hard that.
Yeah.
And Bruce, the change that you made to the bass pot so that it looked like it was on 10, but from a circuit perspective, it's on 3. Did that get made to all of his amps?
No, that was the only one they complained about was that new one. But he was fine with the rest of them. I mean, in those things on a tone control circuit, it's just the bass control is just a variable resistor. It's
Yeah.
That's all it's doing. So I just put a
Yeah.
resistor across it to make it
To
so it would go all the way.
emulate what it would be if it was
Measure it
on
on 3 and then
Yeah. Yeah, I probably put a
Yeah.
22K resistor on it or whatever it was, and that was fine.
I love it.
So, but that was the only one I changed. Now that was the new one with the
15.
15. I don't know.
That kind of makes sense too.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know how
would-
you could
that
tell
would be
which
it.
amp he was hearing anyway. They were all just, it was just absurdly loud and silly.
Right.
But
It is funny how, like, as an artist or whatever, he needed to have everything on 10 to, otherwise he's not happy, regardless of how it's sounding. That's so weird.
yeah.
It's like, yeah. Bruce, we've got a question here for you from Victor. It says, I haven't been out much due to a motorcycle accident 2 years back. Well, that's sorry to hear that. But the question is, didn't you make an amp with EL34 or EL84s on one side and 6L6 or 6V6 on the other?
Not in one.
No, with the Rebel or whatever, when you had the variable knob.
Yeah. Well, the Renegade has EL34s and 6L6s. The Rebel 30 has EL84s and 6V6s, but not all of them in the same amp.
No, I think he was saying he was just couldn't remember, and he was just saying 84. So, and then it had a knob that you can blend the tubes.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, so these were all on concurrently, but you could somehow you could actually blend the power sections in and out. Is that what you had?
Well, we had a knob called Tube Mix.
Okay.
And you could think of it as a pan control between one pair or the other, or in the middle, all four were on. So it was cool. It did something interesting, and most people would find the spot they like and never touch it again. But
yeah, it's cool. It was actually pretty cool.
That sounds cool.
Modified.
So were you just mixing? Were you panning or mixing on the grid inputs to the power tubes, so they're getting different?
It was like what we had to do. It's actually, this one's a bit of a story. I was on vacation. I didn't tell you guys this one, did it?
Go for it.
I don't think so.
Oh, I was on vacation with my family at the Outer Banks. It's a place, where's that? South Carolina, North Carolina. Anyway, it's on the ocean. I was on vacation in the summer, and I get a call from Avi. He says, we got a problem. Well, let me back up. On the first amp that had the 4 tubes in it, the two different pairs, had, I think it was the Rebel 30. And it had a switch on it to just switch between one pair or the other. It's like, okay. And they had already started production on them, but they weren't shipping them in the US yet. In fact, I think they were in Australia, so there may be a few there with a switch.
Oh, okay. So these were being built in the early days of boutique amps. Is that
in China?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, these are all the Egnater stuff was made in China back then.
Right.
But it was the boutique amps distribution thing, the early years. Actually, it was ETI Sound, same people.
Oh, okay. Yep.
But it had a switch on it, and they call me. I'm on vacation with my family at this little house on the beach, and they call and say, we got a problem. Boogie, of course, has a patent on that switch. I said, okay. They said, so we need you to do something. It's like, I'm on vacation with my family. They said, no, you don't understand. These things are on the production line, and they had to stop production until I come up with an alternate thing.
Wow.
Like, what the? Which is, yeah. So I, let's say any more than that on that one. But so my family goes to the beach. I sit down in this little cottage thing, and it's like, all right, what am I going to do? And I came up with, people see stuff that you do, whether you or Dave or me or whatever, and they go, wow, that's really creative. How did you come up with that? It's because you had to. You got forced into solving a problem. So you had to come up with something. So I thought, okay, if I had a 4-ganged pot, one knob with 4 sections behind the panel, like a dual, thing, I would be able to turn, it's like 2 stacked post-phase inverter master volume controls. Two of the pot parts go to one pair and 2 go to the other, and they're wired opposite. So when you turn one or the other, it sends a signal either way. The problem was when it's in the middle, it's as if both of them are turned halfway down.
Mm-hmm.
That was a problem. So I thought, okay, I'll make a center tapped 4-ganged pot. So when it's in the middle, they're both on all the way. And then you're really just turning one down or the other one down. So it was kind of creative, if I do say so myself. But
Absolutely.
The cool thing about in China, you just tell them, I need a 4-gang 500K linear pot center tap. And you just tell them what you want, and it magically appears.
Wow.
I'm trying to do that, here with a and this was 20 years ago. So getting custom parts was like nothing. It was so easy to do. So you were able to do stuff like that. And so we did. So that was my fix.
Thought of the design, when you were thinking through that design, Bruce, did you think, oh, that's not a standard part, so I can't do it? Or did you think, oh, yeah, they'll be able to make one of those? Like
the latter. I said, oh, I'll just tell China and they'll make this part. And 2 days later, they send you 10 of them. It was kind of amazing back then. There were other trade-offs for China with reliability and components, but the cool thing about China was being able to just get any custom part you need without question. They just did it.
Incredible.
Yeah. So that was kind of cool. And the best thing about it, in the Rebel, there happens to be a little wiring harness between the phase inverter and the power tubes, like 2 little plug-in connectors with some wire. I was able to just unplug that and insert this volume control between the 2. So I got really lucky with that. And then they just covered the switch on the front and put a knob in there instead. So I did get lucky on that, but it was a pretty cool thing. That
is cool.
Yeah.
Great story, Bruce. Thanks for that, man. Pentatonic Prancer says, hi, guys. I've got serial number 007 IE4. Dave actually sold it to me. I was looking into buying the Bogner fish, but Dave talked me into the IE4. I think that's what that says. Great preamp. Really love Channel 2 on that pre.
Cool.
That's cool.
I assume you don't still have it.
Yeah, well, it sounded like it was past tense, didn't it? Amazing Guitar says, hi guys, I have this obscure B52 AT100 that sounds incredible. I heard you 2 worked on this design.
Wait, is that the first one or the second one?
That's the second one. The first one
was Bruce's.
What was it? It wasn't the.
What is that amp, Bruce?
It's just an amp. It was Boutique Amps distribution. Those guys.
Mm-hmm.
And I had started doing stuff. I think I told you that story before, where they went to Dave and said, "We've got these amps that sound like crap. Can you make them work?" And Dave looked at them and went, "I'm not going to do that." He said, "But I know a guy." And I was that guy, and Dave.
It's my fault.
Sick them after me. Yes, that is your fault.
It's my fault.
Yep.
And the AT100 was one of the later versions of a couple of things they did. It's funny.
Good.
It was a good sounding amp. You know what the problem was? They also did a combo version of it. It was during a period of time where you couldn't get 12AX7s that weren't microphonic.
Yeah.
And this thing has a ton of gain. So we almost failed at making them because we couldn't stop the microphonic tube problem. It was just
Yeah,
like,
but it sounded good. I might have done some tweaks to it after
probably,
the fact,
yeah.
after the first ones.
Yeah.
But not much. I think it was already in the ballpark of,
Yeah. Well, the AT100, I think I redid, like did the board layouts and stuff, I think.
Yeah, that was a different amp, yeah.
Yeah, but very much, like the other ones. But yeah, it is a little obscure.
It was the B52. Was that the kind of the beginning of boutique amps? Is that the first kind of
First tube amps, yeah.
First tube amps, right.
Well, they, back then, B52 was ETI sound.
Right.
Still is, probably. And they did a lot of PA stuff. They even did the OEM, what is it, Harbinger? Was a OEM, was a Guitar Center brand. And they actually manufactured that stuff for them. They made a lot of other things too, but a lot of PA things. And one of the sales guys, I can't remember who he was, but he found this company in China that you could buy guitar amps and they change the cosmetics and put your name on it. And now you're in the guitar amp business.
Yeah.
And that's what they did.
Smarvo.
So they started out. Yeah. What was that?
Smarvo.
Yeah. Smarvo. So that's what they did. And they kind of weren't good. So they started out doing that. And that was the first B52 boutique amps, all the same family. Started with that. And then they kind of got good at it after a while and got Dave and got me. And, and here they are now, 25 years later. But that's how it started. And then that's when they came to Dave and said, hey, we bought these amps and they sound like crap and they blow up. Can you fix them? And Dave said, no, I got this other guy that'll do that.
I know a guy.
Yeah, so I was that guy. So anyway, that was the real beginning of B52 or boutique amps doing guitar amps.
Cool story. Yeah, that's cool. Brad saying, hey, Bruce, I'd like to say I'm in awe of your patience helping ungrateful people on the Facebook amp groups. Thank you, sir. Yeah, Bruce, you're a legend at doing that.
I view everybody on the internet as a potential future customer.
Yes.
Even if they appear to be a knucklehead, someday, if you can get through to one person, you got a new customer. So
yeah, it's true. I often get asked by my partner, Catherine, she goes, why did you spend so much time helping that guy, like on a phone call or whatever? And I say, because he's going to buy an amp one day.
Yeah. If not now, later.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. No, totally. It really pans out. Like, I go out of my way with my customer service for everyone. I'm quick on emails and I monitor the Facebook stuff and and because of that, people are like, well, you know what, I'm going to buy your product because I know that if I have a problem, you're there.
Yeah, I see that all the time about you.
And so, yeah. Now the only problem is that I start to get phone calls from like, so I know this isn't your brand, but I have this synergy question about there. I've emailed them, but they don't answer.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh. I had a diesel one today. I had
yeah.
I'm gonna start going to Avi and going, hey, pay me this much a month, and may as well just send the emails to me because I'm already doing it.
Correct.
Consulting, they call that.
Yeah.
This is right. This is exactly right. There's a question here for you, Bruce, from Paul, which is, after one of your classes, where would a new builder be? Would they be ready to build one on their own, or simply just kind of be happy with what they've just built in the class?
Spending 12 hours with me does not turn you into an amp builder, and that's your new career. It's more we got you started. So to answer the question, what was the question? Be ready for one on. I don't know that you would be ready to design a new an amp unless you know electronics and all that other stuff. I can show you how you want to learn to play guitar. I can show you Smoke on the Water, but that doesn't make you a guitar player. It makes you be able to play some songs. So yeah, you learn a ton of cool stuff, but don't expect to walk out and start your amp company tomorrow. It's not that easy. It's not because I don't teach you the stuff. It's just you need a little more than just a weekend with me, But you learn all the cool stuff. I save you a couple of years of research.
Yeah, it's an accelerator, I guess, is the way.
Yeah, just get the right start.
Good way to start. Where are we at here? So Hook is saying he saw the Foo Fighters here in Melbourne on Wednesday night. Yeah, they played a big outdoor show. Well, one of the stadiums. Chris was using his Friedman's live. Sounded good.
Yeah, real amps.
Yeah.
Lots of them.
I've met Hook. He's bought a couple of his Friedmans in here, Dave, for me to work on.
Cool.
I think he had one of those pot failures, actually, is my memory. Yeah. And Brad is saying, so Brad, the tin whiskers. So you've seen them in the JCM 900 pots. Got to watch where that shit lands after blowing it out. Yeah.
We had terrible trouble with all the Egnater amps after years of being out in the field. We started to have weird stuff. And that's when I discovered tin whiskers.
Same thing, was it, Bruce?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great stuff, isn't it, Brad?
I don't think I've seen an amp with it, or maybe it's been there, but it wasn't causing a problem and I didn't notice it. Lyle's saying he's fixed a lot of current Marshalls with the green 9mm pots with compressed air. Yeah, I know those pots. I know the ones you mean. Question here from Tim. Hey, Tim. When repairing an amp, how do you feel about changing original parts? Keep them as original as possible or change the parts for reliability, assuming it's not your amp and not a customer's request?
I guess that would be amp, is it? How vintage is it?
I think that's the key question.
If it's a super vintage plexi amp or something, that you want to try to keep all the original parts if you can, but I mean, not filter caps or something like that, but you could try to avoid changing as much as possible, at least, or sometimes you can get replacements. If you want to keep it like in original state, you can get a replacement mustard cap or something that, that might be nice for the just collectability and the vintage of the amp,
Some parts just wear out. You have a vintage car. You, at some point, you're going to have to replace the fan belt and the tires. As much as you'd like to keep the original, some stuff you can't.
Bias caps, filter caps. I mean,
we
routinely on really old amps. After we routinely change those. After a vintage JTM 45 that I borrowed from my friend Matt Bruck because I needed to AB something to it. After the filter cap blew up on my bench, even though I brought it up with the Variac slow and everything because it hadn't been on in a while, there's a filter cap mounted on the side in those old ones, and that's the one that blew up. It was on. My back was to the amp. I was doing something else.
Straight across
and all of a sudden, I hear it's like a gun going off. Bang!
Wow.
All the junk of the cap all up on my wall. And then all across the whole beautiful, pristine circuit board in the amp with all the guck and paper and everything else. And let me tell you, you can't get it all off.
Well, at least it wasn't your face.
Then we had to clean it like with super wash and like, just like clean it with a toothbrush and meticulously try to clean as much off as humanly possible. But that it really doesn't clean. So after that, it's like if I see a really old Marshall, it's like I'm changing the filter caps.
Mm-hmm.
Period. I don't want that to happen again.
Well, the only reason guitar players want to retain the original parts is for the original tone. It's like, well,
which is what?
Yeah. It doesn't sound now how it did when they made it anyway, but yeah, you can't. There are trade-offs. You just can't. There's some things you have to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's like with any kind of non-vintage amp, it's just fair game. You know, if a part needs changing, you change it. If it's a vintage amp, it's a more often than not a conversation you'll have with the owner. You know, what do they want to do?
Yeah.
How much they're prepared to spend as well, you know?
Well, you tell them I can change the parts and it'll probably keep working for a long time, or you can leave the old parts in and don't come back. Or it'll be, I told you so. Yeah. Or it'll cost you twice as much when they do.
I'm going to use that line on my next phone call, Bruce.
Don't come back.
Don't come back. You could choose that, but then don't come back.
Yeah, don't come crying to me, you know.
Emilio's asking, Dave and Bruce, can you talk about your experience with transformers? Do you have a deep personal interest as a manufacturer, as a designer? I think, you know, I guess I'd summarize this question perhaps by saying, do transformers matter?
Yes and no.
It depends.
I mean, let's just boil this down to this. There's hardly any in the U.S. There's hardly any guitar amp transformer makers.
Mm-hmm.
There's almost. I mean, there's Haybor, which make great transformers. They make them like old transformers, and you know that's great. They're not always the greatest on the power transformers, but that's a different story.
Yeah, they make mistakes, you know.
There was Classic Tone, which was the parent company was.
Is that Marvel?
Magnetic Components, was it?
Yeah.
Magnetic Components and Marvel also, but they went out of business.
Yeah.
I think they went out of business because they were selling their transformers too cheaply.
Yeah.
Because even the guys at Haybor were like, I don't even know how they can sell it for that price. I know what's in it. M6 steel and this many laminations and this. I don't know how they can even sell it for that price. It's funny. Some of the machinery and parts and even cardboard boxes were bought by Haybor.
Yeah.
Really?
Because I know we got some Haybor transformers and Magnetic Components boxes.
Okay. I knew they grabbed a few winders, and I think some of the staff also transferred across too, didn't they?
I don't know. Well, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But other than that, you have Mercury Magnetics, which is insanely overpriced. Just
they are.
Do they make a good transformer? I've heard some that are good sounding and some that are not great sounding. I don't know. That's personal preference. Do they make a transformer that's working, that's made well? Yes. But at maybe 4 times the cost of something from Haybor.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it gets to be like, you got to be kidding. No. It's just no.
I don't understand. I've never been able to understand, Dave, how they can kind of stay in business charging that price when there's alternatives out there.
Well, their business is not all their audio transformer business. It's not all that's not all they do. They do.
It's more of an annoyance than anything for them, probably.
Commercial transformers and all sorts of other things.
Usual thing, right? Industrial stuff and all that.
Now, dealer pricing, if you're a Mercury dealer, is considerably less than what you pay on the website if you're just a customer.
Correct, but it's still
it's still too much. Yeah,
it's still still way too much.
Yeah. What about Pacific?
There are specific transformers. Specific transformers make good transformers. They are on the expensive side, but not like they're more money than Habor, but
not as much
less
as
than Mercury. They make good transformers. They do a really good job.
Yeah.
But they do also have some other series of transformers. They have 3 factories. So they have a factory in Anaheim. They have a factory in Mexico. And they have a factory overseas somewhere.
Right.
And so depending on what your needs are and what kind of price points you need to make, they can design the transformer here and then have it made offshore or Mexico if you want in the middle tier pricing.
Right.
They can, in quantities and stuff, it kind of comes down a little bit. They're good. They're good.
There's also Hammond is another one.
Hammond is another one, but they make a lot of replacement transformers that are quite fine for guitar amps. They kind of took over some of what Magnetic Components had.
Yeah.
And you can almost get anything for anything. They're pretty good sounding. Not quite as good as say Habor or whatever, but fine for a lot of things. They're good quality. And other than that, I mean, I think there's one other transformer company that I forgot the name that Matchless uses. I can't remember what the name is, but they're small potatoes kind of by comparison.
Yeah.
The others. And there really isn't really anything else anymore. Not that I know of.
Most guitar amp guys, I'm sure some of them do. I don't know anything about designing transformers. I give specifications to Habor and it magically shows up at my door. And if it's not right, you tell them what's not right and they fix it.
Yeah.
That's the extent of my transformer designing. I tell them what wire colors I want. It's got to fit in this space and they just do it right. And I don't have to worry about it. But that's
I don't know. I want to know. It's a black box. It's like I want to know maybe, you specify current and primary impedance and that kind of stuff, but how they do it.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
And I'm sure they haven't designed a new transformer in 40 years. They just repackage existing stuff. They've been making transformers for like 60 years. So when you say, well, I need a transformer for these tubes, this impedance, all that stuff, I would imagine they can very easily just pull out some old designs from that they've done 100 times and make it look the way you want. And I mean, yeah, of course they can tweak things if you need it, but I don't know how much modern transformer designing really goes on. In fact, for the amp class, I can't remember which one it was. I think it was the 20 watt. One day they called me. They said, hey, can you use a 50 volt instead of a 60 volt tap for the bias on your power transformer if we don't change anything else? I said, yeah, that'll work fine. And they said, because we already have somebody else's design, we can just tweak it and use it. We'll use it for you. They were trying to cut down on all these millions of little transformer designs that were almost identical.
Yeah.
Except for stuff like that. So yeah, I don't think they really have to design new transformers nowadays. It's 100-year-old technology,
They could probably, because one thing that Habor have never kind of done directly anyway is sell online or sell direct. You have to you can anyone can contact them, but it's kind of old school email, phone calls, or anything like that. They don't have an online store or whatever. I know they've got Amp Parts Direct that kind of sell their stuff through there, but
Yeah.
But
And Mojo.
yeah, I mean,
Mojo.
Yeah, Mojo. Yeah,
most of
probably
the
more just too small to worry about, perhaps.
Yeah. Well, they are old school. They're in Michigan. They're like 2 hours from Detroit.
Yeah.
So I've been to the factory, and it's like
as old as it gets.
Old school. They've got these women sitting there with converted lathes, wood, for wood lathes. They're converted to winding transformer bobbins and stuff like that. It's all like serious old school.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Like you step back into 1955.
Yeah, they've got steel case desks and, dark paneling and all that stuff.
George Metropolis was telling me the funny thing is like all the designs are on like little wine cards.
Yeah.
Really?
And all those wine cards are in these file cabinets.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the file cabinets are right under, what did he say? It was right under like a water tank or some sort of, or a sprinkler system and this and that. And George is like, you should probably digitize all this information.
Yeah.
None of it is digitized. It's all in these little wine cards.
Oh man.
So like, he's like looking at it going, oh, one of these days they're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
That's insane. We'll move on. Morris is asking, when an amp's gain knob is turned past 1 o'clock and the sound does not really get any gainier, but instead gets mushy and undefined, is that a design flaw?
It's had a design flaw.
Or lack of gain stage. I'm sure.
Define design flaw.
Yeah.
A lot of amps, not so much mine, but a lot of amps from the past are like that because some of them rely on the bright cap that's on the gain pot, to kind of do a high pass filter thing. And they really sound good between 6 and 7, but like if you take them to 10, they get muddy because that kind of comes out of the equation, and that's no good. So I mean, I like to be able to take it to 10 and it still sound good, and then also sound good lower. So it's a design choice, maybe.
Yeah.
If you try to squeeze too much gain out of just like a few stages or something, it after a while it'll get mucky. That's Bruce always used to use small coupling cap out of the first stage, and just reduce it till it's tighter, and I remember, 001 or something, but yeah, if you just add gain to a JCM 800 stage with the 1 meg 470K and the 1 meg pot, and if you add the second stage is as hot as the first stage, it sounds like mud.
Yeah.
You gotta put a smaller cap going into that, or play with the divider.
That's what amp designs are. You tweak them so they don't do that.
Yeah.
A lot of amps aren't designed by guitar players too, or at least people that don't have the same taste as you may.
Yeah.
I think we talked about that last time, right? The number of designers over history that didn't play guitar. I think, Dave, you've always said Jose never play guitar.
No.
Yeah.
Leo Fender and Jim Marshall, and none of them were guitar players. They had people with them that, provided the information, but they didn't pick up the guitar and play it and go, oh, I don't like that, or I do like that. They didn't know. Yeah,
that boggles my mind for me. I can't.
Yeah.
I have to like play it and feel it and like.
Yeah.
It must make the feedback cycle, like where you make some tweaks and then a player plays it and gives you feedback, and then you take that feedback into consideration and make some more changes.
Yeah.
That must take an age, whereas when you can do that yourself, you kind of just do it in real time, right? Like I don't know. There was a question here, Dave, about the tin whiskers and pots. I can't find it now, but what are the symptoms? Is it
it doesn't, your channel doesn't work?
Just complete just dies completely?
Dies, or it'll sound like really low volume, same amount of gain, but it depends on what pot dies.
Yeah.
It can be everything's the same, but it's really low volume. Okay, maybe that's a master pot. It can be the treble pot failed. It could be the bass or no EQ bass pot failed. Like the bass, doesn't, two of the controls don't work. It sounds like an AM radio. Then
yes,
most likely it's a bass pot fail.
We had a lot of trouble with the treble pot on a bunch of models with the whiskers. And it was so weird trying to figure it out, because now the treble control acts like a volume control instead of a treble knob.
Right.
But then you pull the board out that the pots are mounted to, and then it worked. This was before I knew what was going on. So you'd take the board out, and then it would work. And because the whiskers are shorting
the chassis
to the body of the pot, and then you screw it to the chassis.
Mm-hmm.
So it was shorting whatever, the wiper or whatever was being shorted to ground. But yeah, the symptoms can be peculiar.
And I've even had another one where it's like you can disconnect the pot and measure it with a meter, and it reads perfectly fine.
Yep.
You apply signal to the pot, signal voltage to the pot, stops. It just goes. Okay. Yeah. I was arguing with a tech once. He takes the pots out and measure them because they measure just fine. I go, just replace the pots. Trust me, it's a bad pot. Just trust me. You'd save yourself a lot of time. In fact, if you want to shotgun the thing and replace three pots real quick. You can do it faster than doing the troubleshooting you're doing, just like, sometimes they would want to go and end on, I'm telling you, the problems that you're describing is a pot. Just go there and check it.
Now, if you're checking the pot with your ohm meter, it's probably fine, but connect your ohm meter to the body of the pot, and then.
Yeah, you gotta check this. Yeah, it's exactly. So that's fun, but compressed air and a really strong contact cleaner works pretty good.
Can sort it out. That's cool. Clyde's asking, can we get all three opinions on the Marshall 18-watt 1987X reissue? That's a 50-watt amp. Unless, do you understand that question, Dave? 18-watt 1987.
I don't think it's the 19. Oh, are they
1974?
I think that's what. Well, they have to clarify it. 1974 would be the 18-watt reissue.
It's a hand-wired combo.
And if they're talking about the 20-watt Plexi, that's the SV20. So, not sure what they're talking about.
Yeah, Clyde,
if it's the 1974 18-watt reissue, well, it was a good reissue of that amp. I mean, it was a hand-wired amp. It was. I never really love how those sound.
Yeah.
What used to sound really good is the vintage lead bass 20-watt heads.
20.
Which are very similar, but some of those sounded great.
They were both EL84 amps, weren't they, Dave? Is there anything different in the power section that's kind of stands out? How that's
between the 20 and the 18, it's really the same thing, except the 20 didn't have a tube rectifier.
Oh, okay. Maybe explain it.
What was it? 5C4 or something, or 5 or 6?
Yeah.
6C4. I can't remember what the name model is. That little, it looks like an EL84, but it's a
Yeah, I know the one you mean. Now, what is that?
6C4, is it?
Good
remember. Question.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
It has. Yeah. Someone's saying, "Hey Bruce, thanks for the Mod 100 and RM100 amplifiers. Just needed to tell you that." There you go.
Oh, you're welcome.
6CA4. It's a 6CA4 or an EZ81.
Oh,
yeah, that's the number.
EZ81. That's it.
Yeah,
that's the one.
That's close.
Yeah. Now, when you get rid of the rectifier, then the power supply voltage went up, which would account for a difference in the sound too. So
probably why you get squeeze 20 watts rather than 18. Yeah. So, it's a question here from Jay for Dave. Are there any up and coming dudes that mod or build that impress you?
Dan Gower in England is
yeah, Dan's killer.
He's killer. He does a good job. Well, I don't know. Does Shay do any mod work still?
Yeah, he still mods.
Yeah, Shay from Monomyth is good at what he does. He has a sound that he likes, and if you like his sound, yeah. Good guys though, I don't really know anyone else. At least not that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's cool.
Could be forgetting someone.
This was a question. Just scanning through the chat here, guys. Now, Mark is good at that, right? Mark and I were chatting about this the other day about how hard it is to try and hold a conversation and read and scan the chat and bring questions up.
Absolutely.
That's the hardest thing you'll ever do.
I'm trying to do that. I've never done it. It's like, man, it's weird.
Mark's got it down to a fine art. I've got respect for that.
He does, and he moves it along too. I think sometimes maybe Lyle has a little bit of trouble with the chat questions and moving it, like through. I always find I go to say hi in the show, and he's very far behind in the chat.
Yeah. It is
like, by the time he says hi, it's like I'm already at the bench again. It's hard to do. I'm not knocking anyone. It's fucking hard.
You don't know how far. You don't know how far to go. This was. I'll just clarify this, and then there's a super chat that I'm going to get to that. So BSTFU, we had an earlier question from him about the super lead that sounded muddy, and we asked whether it always sounded like that. So yes, the super lead sounded much more punchy and able to cut through previously. It just seems to have started sounding mushy and muddy lately.
Could be tubes.
Yeah.
Filtering changes over the years. I don't know how old this super lead is, so but could be tubes. Probably not so much preamp tubes. Maybe, but people always want to change all their tubes, and I'm like, you know what? The preamp tubes you have are the good ones, so I don't know if you should change those.
Yeah.
Like the good Chinese or something. And as like, yeah, you don't want to change. Oh, if you do want to change those, can I have them?
Yeah. Yep.
Because power tubes maybe. Check the bias maybe. Amp bias, dude, it can drift over time, or maybe you have one tube that's drawing way more current than the other ones. I love in all my builds these days. I use the 25 turn bias pot.
Yeah, I started using that, Dave.
And I love that. It's so much easier to set the bias precisely. When it's not, when you get a bias pot, it's jumping, and you're just like, I want it. No, I got a little bit. No, and you think about it, it's like, if that's banged around a lot, will that move?
I know,
You
because
know?
they don't. They look like you could blow on them and they'd move,
Yeah.
right? Whereas
Not to
that
mention the 25 turn ones are a nicer
lock
pot
it in,
anyway,
man.
with a metal little, trimmer, and I like those.
Yeah, that's cool. Robert's saying here in a super chat, thanks, Robert. So he tried the 25K versus 5K pot on the Presence in a 2204. Didn't really notice much difference. Can you guys elaborate on what
It's
the difference
only
is?
you're only gonna it goes more off. Doesn't change anything about the top, like when it's up. Doesn't change anything about that. It just it makes it go darker.
You're talking about the two different circuits, or
no, the same Presence circuit, just with a 25K versus 5K. In the newer style Marshall, like JCM800 Presence circuit,
that has the 4.7K resistor.
Yeah, it has that. So it's just a resistance value between the cap and the tail, and it just
Okay.
25K goes a little darker than the 5K.
Yeah. Other than
25K doesn't work for shit though. I wouldn't even
it
bother
doesn't do
with
anything until you get it past.
It's the last quarter of the turn is the only way.
It's a range thing, isn't it? I just find
it's a range thing. It's all of your
5K linear. Yeah, 5K linear pot is kind of nice and just all the way
10K,
through.
10K works well in that circuit too.
Yeah, the 25K at 12 o'clock on the knob is 12K, and it hasn't done anything yet.
Yeah.
So it would seem a 10K might be like the ideal.
10K is kind of the ideal thing. I remember Fryette telling me that years ago too.
Yeah.
Long time ago. Because 10K, that's the way to do it. Use that.
Yeah.
25K is dumb. I think they just used it because that was their mid pot.
Part they stocked.
And I think that's not a bad theory, that, Dave. It sounds something they'd do.
It's definitely something they do. I mean, I've seen some super leads come in. It's like, oh, all the 100K plate resistors that cross the amp, they're all 82K.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, they ran out of 022 caps. This super lead has 0.1s all through.
Yep.
Most of the amp.
I had a 1987X reissue that had the 68K resistors that are always on the input jacks, 100Ks all the way through.
Yeah.
It's like, still worked, of course, but it's close. Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah, kind of there. Definitely factory too. That was not modded. We've got a question here. Someone who enjoys the Soldano SLO sound, will the PV5150 work? How would you compare the two circuits? Great show, guys.
Enjoys the SLO sound. So does a 5150 sound like an SLO?
Yeah, and other circuits, similar?
I mean, they have some similarities in some of it, but
a cathode resistor,
yeah, that's
a certain
the exact same cathode resistor. But after that stage, it's a little different. Not the traditional cathode follower, is it?
I can't remember. It's plate fed, isn't it?
Weird thing.
It's a plate fed punch stack in the 5150.
Yeah, there's no follower, and it's got some funny feedback thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's funny, but it has a feedback thing, if I recall. I don't know. They're different. No, I wouldn't say they'd sound the same at any point.
No, I wouldn't think so either. Bruce, have you done much with plate fed tone stacks? Are you a fan of that design?
Driving Marshall tone controls, I would say that's not a great idea just because of the load of the Marshall tone control circuit. But it would work. And, guys will take that cathode follower and change it to another gain stage and use the plate for the output. So it works. Everything works. there is no right or wrong. So you can kind of do anything you want, and nobody will know what you did unless you tell them.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah, Tim's asking, I wonder if Kyle will start making transformers. So this is a reference to Kyle Rhodes at KSR. I think Kyle will eventually, given the fullness of time. I know he wants to.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be pretty interesting if we had another manufacturer on the scene for transformers. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, he'd be the guy to do it. So
yeah, yep. He's just crazy enough that he'd do it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
John V's asking Bruce and Dave, thoughts on KT77s and your amps?
Are they really that much different than EL34s? I mean, I guess they are, but does it sound that much different? Have you ever played with those?
I've never tried them in anything, I don't think.
Jason, have you?
All I've done, Dave, is I had a diesel VH4 that a guy bought in that had I think because they were stock KT77s, weren't they, at one point?
They were stock all sorts of things at different points. But
I thought Peter Diesel had a massive stack of KT77, so he just used them and used them and used them. And the guy wanted it flicked over to 6L6s. And I did A/B it. I remember recording it before and after, and, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know how much different it really is. I don't use them, don't care about them, don't even think about them. So
I've still got that quad of KT7 and 77s that came out of that amp. I'm still sitting there on the shelf, but I've just never done anything with them. I was like, I'll use them one day, but
if you used them in production, it would be a just something to brag about. Not because you believe they sound better or anything. It'd just be, well, it's got KT77, so it's cooler. When it comes to
it's interesting.
Player, that tube rolling thing, try anything you want, but when you're building amps, you're usually not screwing around with power tubes as much like that.
I know I did a test a while back where I put a set of 5881s, Sovtech 5881s in a B100, and then I had another one, same identical amp with EL34s, and set it, just a moderate volume with an amp switcher switching back and forth. And you literally could turn the dials on the amp like a notch in a couple different directions and match them up like identically.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't that much different. Now, would it be different if you were pushing the power section and pushing? It probably would be different. But
it's not better or worse.
It's not as much difference as you think.
I do wonder, Bruce, you kind of touched on it there, right? Whether there's an element of marketing in this, I think.
Sure.
The special, this is the KT66 run, and I don't know. How different is it,
Well, the 5150, then they came out with the 5150 34. No doubt it was just customer demand. It's not like they had to do that to sell amps,
They just changed the bias range, and that was...
I don't even know what they changed,
I don't either.
No, me neither. Alex is saying we talk about transformers. Marshall transformers from Vietnam are pretty good. Yeah, well... Stay tuned to my channel, Alex. We might do a little reveal on that topic. We'll see. Well, they work. I can tell you that much.
If you hit them,
if you hit them with a hammer, this is right. I think someone said, was it in the chat last week? I can't remember. I think it was last week. Yeah, which is like Marshall need to ship the new transformers with a hammer in every box. Scott Kingman. Hey, Scott. How are you, mate? Hey, lads. So you've got a mate with a 1970s Plexi. The transformer is kaput. Okay, I'm thinking output transformer here, I'm assuming. I think that maybe say how much of a difference is the tone of the old to a modern replacement. So what would you do? You try and get the old transformer rewound or just replace it with a modern one?
You could get probably the best choice, and technically it's not a Plexi. If it's 70s, it's a metal panel amp. But
yeah,
just pointing that out. But probably the M6 steel Habor 100-watt. What's the model number, Jason?
That's the 8026H. Is that one?
The
100-watt OT.
Yeah, but it's the diagonal clone.
The diagonal one. Is it the 1996?
Yeah, 1996 or diagonal clone 100-watt OT that Habor has. I would recommend the Habor one. With the M6 steel, because I think that'll be the closest to the original, and that'll sound great. No difference. It won't be any different.
Scott, I can say
very little difference.
You should contact Alex at Sirius Amplification. I know you know Alex. He could rewind that. He rewound.
Let's do that.
Yeah, he rewound one for a customer of mine 4 weeks ago, and on an old early 80s 2203 JCM 800, and it sounded great.
Oh, do that. That's easier.
Yeah, and I think the customer feels good about the fact that he's preserved the old iron, so always helps. Where are we at here?
I don't even want to know about transformer winding.
No, I know. You do not want to know.
Don't want to do it. Don't want to know about it. Don't.
Here we go. Any thoughts on a JCM 2000 DSL 100 as a mod candidate? Worth it or nah?
No.
I modded one once, and then that was it. I kind of ticked the box. Would never do it again. Too much of a pain in the ass.
It's a computer inside. Chips.
Yeah.
All over.
Is that your favorite mod, Dave, where you throw it in the bin? That one? So Scott, I think that was you're just elaborating on that thing. Yeah. So how much does the old transformer affect the tone? Well, I don't know, man. The modern replacements will sound great. Will it be different? Who knows?
It's funny. You have an amp and you blow the transformer. It's probably going to be a month or two before you get it fixed.
You won't remember what it sounded like.
Can you remember what your amp sounded like 2 months ago? I don't know.
Dave, you've got an output transformer switcher, where you could wire up two OTs on the same amp and flick between them.
You do 4.
Oh, 4. Have you tried this? Have you tried this with an old vintage OT and a?
Yeah. I have.
What did you find?
The Habor ones are like the same. I mean, no two vintage OT sounds exactly the same either, but so
it's probably the point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same. If it's the right OT, it's the same.
Yeah. Okay.
The materials for transformers are not mysterious. They haven't really changed that much over the decades, all these years, unlike some other components. It's still a core, and really the only things that I should qualify that. Of course, stuff does change, but it's such a brute force device. It's not like a guitar pickup where you've got 40 gauge wire and the insulation thickness matters.
Yeah.
That. So, you're talking about a big old hunk of metal with some wires wrapped.
It froze up.
That's true.
We lost him. Are you there? Okay, there we go. We lost you for a second.
Oh, okay.
You froze up and then disappeared.
I think
for a
the
second.
audio was okay. This Toby's asking what kind of pots had the tin whiskers. I think it was the alphas, right, Dave?
Yes, but probably other ones too.
Probably other ones too. Yeah, this is right. Carsten amps, Dave. I think this was another name to throw in the mix for the question of who's doing cool stuff.
No, I mean Brian is awesome, actually. But I mean, I don't know if he does mods though.
I don't think so. Well, not that I'm aware of, anyway.
Yeah, no, not that I'm aware of.
I think this question's been asked a few times on Tone Talk, Dave. The PS Vane tubes. I would extend this question and say, are they good now? Because I think they had some maybe early days.
We use the EL34s. The EL34s have been. I haven't had one fail in the field. And we've been using them for a while now. So whether or not our techs have any that they've found on the bench that have failed, I don't know really, but it hasn't been brought to my attention. And I haven't seen it happen, and I haven't seen it in the field, which is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So those are awesome. There has been some issues with some of the other things, like some of the preamp tubes are pretty good now. We're using some of them. They are weeded through pretty well, but the new batches we've gotten are the right amount of gains. They're real balanced.
Do you use them in particular slots?
We only use them in phase inverter and cathode follower. And then the first stage is a JJ generally, just for low microphonics. And I don't pick it for it's my favorite sound, but it'll work.
Yeah, well, that's probably the most important thing.
I mean, you can sit with amps and you can sit with preamp tubes all day long if it's your own amp and you want to play with it. I mean, I do that if I'm fine tuning an amp on the bench, like I was doing an old Plexi today for someone, and I'm just like, let's try these tubes. No, that I don't like that. Let's try these. He had some NOS tubes too. I was listening to those, and the thing I've decided is like the old Brimar preamp tubes sound generally always better than the Mullard preamp tubes. I don't know. It's just an observation I was making today.
Interesting. Question here from Scott again, which is, Jace, have you reached out to the mythical Gandalf of YouTube amps, Uncle Doug? No, I haven't, and this question made me think, Dave, whether or not you'd ever contacted Uncle Doug to go on Tone Talk.
I don't really even pay attention to who that is.
He's good.
He's good?
Yeah.
You got a lot of followers.
Yeah.
I think I've watched some stuff before, but yeah. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. What part of the US is Uncle Doug even in? I don't know. I'm just curious. I know he's been around a long time.
Yeah.
Lyle's saying, this is back on the Presence pot. Yeah, 25K is in parallel with a 4K7, of course, so it's going to be much lower than 5K. Well, yeah, so
it's not in parallel.
The 4K7?
It's not in parallel with a 4K7.
Well, with a cap in series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a cap in series. It's not exact. I mean, it's not exactly parallel.
Makes me wonder whether you could try the 10K pot with a 10K resistor to ground to get the same thing. Where are we at here, guys? So Robert did a conversion of a Bassman 100 and left the tone stack plate fed, and it sounds great. Oh, there you go.
Cool. Never liked it when I tried to do it. Oh, I know a guy that I don't know if he does mods, but Eddie Lentz.
Oh yeah, Eddie. Yeah, Eddie does do mods. Yeah.
Yeah. He's cool. Young.
Yeah.
Young.
He's barely 23, isn't he?
Yeah. But it's
like-
amazing how much, because when we had him on our show and stuff, it's amazing how much he knows already. Like
Yeah.
he really is up to speed.
Yeah, and he's just he seems kind of mature beyond his years, like
Yeah.
for a guy. I remember when I was, at that age, there's no way I'd be doing. And he's a great player as well. I don't know if you've seen some of his, he's a ripping player, which obviously helps. What else we got here, guys? Shredding 51 converted an SLX. That's the JCM 900. We talked about the circuit the other day. From 6L6s to 34s, there was a big difference. Yeah, okay. We'll see.
When you're switching like types of tubes like that, now you have impedance. The primary of the output transformer is not the same for those two different, like EL34s and 6L6s do not want to see the same transformer impedance.
Correct.
So when you change it, it's some of it, I don't know, maybe it's somewhat the tube itself, though tubes are generally, until you overload them, but a power tube is as linear as they can make them amplifying device. They don't really have a tone, so to speak, until you hook them up to a transformer, and then the primary of the output transformer becomes a big factor. So when you switch from one to the other, not only are you switching tubes, but you're mismatching one of them or the other, but they don't work the same in a single transformer.
This is it, Bruce. So do you think that what people are hearing when they say, hey, this tube sounds different, it's not that the tube sounds different, it's that you've changed, the tube is not necessarily pushing into an optimal load, it's at a different operating point than it was perhaps optimally designed for, and that's the kind of what they're hearing, as opposed to the tube actually sounding different?
I would say 90% probably, yeah. Like Dave said, until you overload it, and then, okay, everything goes out the window. But yes, that's a big part of it. At the EL34, a pair of EL34s wants to see 36 or 3,200 ohms, and a pair of 6L6s wants to see 5K or whatever the numbers are. It's a meaningful difference.
Definitely. Definitely. Mark's asking whether, Bruce, you can modify his tube amp so the master volume reads 1, but it's actually on 6.
Yeah.
Should make it easier to explain to the wife that I can't run it any lower.
Yeah.
I know, Mark, you're a local here in Melbourne, mate, so you bring that amp in and I'm sure I can...
Yeah. There's a thing called pot taper that makes a difference too. Yeah,
I'll put a reverse taper pot in there,
on
the volume for you. That'll make a difference. Question here about what do you think of the build quality of the old Jet City? So the JCA 20H, for instance. Familiar with that amp? Like, Dave, I know you've modded these before, haven't you? The JCA 20s. Yeah. What do you think of the build quality of those?
They're actually they're made really well. Actually, it's perfectly fine. It's like it literally is a verbatim circuit board layout that Mike used in his 21 amps that he had. It's almost identical. It probably is identical.
Probably.
And I guess the only weak link is they have little PCB pots with no bracing for the pot. So, it's the little tiny like alpha style pot with just the legs coming out right into the board. And if they get bent at all, you can break the pot. So occasionally pots break, especially if you're modding it.
So
and you
Dave, is that
accidentally
just
bend it, the pot, and
yeah,
yeah.
sounds like that's
But,
happened to you.
the
mate.
fun thing to mod on those is it's really easy because it all pops out on one board, the whole amp on one circuit board, and just pops. You can pop it out of the amp in no time, put it on your bench, and just mod the board and then put it back in the amp. That's great.
And what is it? Is it 3-stage plus cathode follower?
It's
Dave?
basically the standard circuit is basically a Mike's version of a 800 kind of.
Okay,
It's kind of like his crunch channel.
got it.
So that's the architecture of it. So it's 3 gain stages, cathode follower.
Sounds like a good candidate for modding to me.
Really easy to mod.
Yeah, I know Shay's done mods on that too. So
yeah, it comes out great. It sounds great.
Yeah,
you used to be able to get them really cheap.
They do come up occasionally. I just kind of like, it's always somewhere where I can't be bothered going to go and get it. It's like, yeah, but I do want to grab one day. Make a good video, probably. Where else are we here, guys? We've got getting through this. Yeah, a lot of love for Uncle Doug here. Uncle Doug and his wonderful pets were the first amp YouTuber I watched. Oh, there you go. He's been around. Uncle Doug, love that guy.
Cool.
I don't think, has anyone ever seen him? He couldn't come on a show like this because you'd need to actually be on camera. He's a bit like Lyle in the old days where all it was hands and a voice and the amp, right? Yeah. Okay, he's in Douglas Daniels. There you go. El Paso, Texas.
Yeah.
I'm surprised you guys don't know him. Been around, I guess. Question here for Bruce. We're nearly through this chat, guys.
Okay.
And we're just over 2 hours, so we've made good progress. So, low quality guitar videos. On that topic, Bruce, the EL34 6L6 sweep on your Renegade, how does that relate to the design of the transformers? Which were the transformers optimized for? This is about the primary impedance question.
Somewhere in the middle?
Or between the two.
Which is not that far out, right? And that when you're talking about 34s and 6L6s.
Yeah, now the only the load doesn't change when you pan from one to the other. It's still a 4-tube amp all connected to the transformer at the same time. I don't recall exactly what impedance I did, but it's probably fairly low. Even though it's not 100 watts, it's still 4 tubes. But I imagine it was in the 3,000 ohm range on the primary. But it doesn't matter where the mix pot is set. That doesn't affect the load impedance on the tubes. But I don't remember exactly what I did.
Interesting. And Alex is saying, yeah, you've done this, haven't you, Alex? Can people buy this? So you did a JCA20 drop-in board using an LND 150 to drive the cathode or to create a cathode follower. So is that because you converted the cathode follower to an extra gain stage and then used an LND 150 to drive the tone stack so you could have an extra gain stage? Yeah. I think I haven't heard the amp, but I know you've told me it sounds great, so I'm sure it does. Yeah. I guess I could sell it. Yeah. Well, man, people like mod boards. No doubt about that. Well, guys, I think we are through this chat.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. So thanks for coming on again. It's been always a pleasure.
Same here.
Yeah. So I'm going to do 2 more streams before I'm going to break for a while over the Christmas break. The last stream I thought I'd just do and would be 2 weeks from now, just an open invite roundtable for everyone who's been on so far. So if you guys are available and looking for something to do on a Thursday night,
10 people on the screen at once.
Maybe we'll see, man.
Well,
we're going to break new ground. Let's see what happens.
Wow.
Yeah, Stormlight Architect. Hey, thanks, man. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, guys. Thanks for sharing your history and knowledge. All I want for Christmas is a purple JEL50. There you go, Dave. Purple's, you got to vote here for purple.
Maybe we should make them all purple.
I think you should. Why not? What does Jake think of purple? Would he like it?
I don't know. I have to ask him.
I think you might have to, man. Yeah. He clearly likes red.
Yeah. I think that was just a thing that he did for a minute.
Did he own a red Marshall for a minute, like back in the day?
What he told me he really wants to own is he always kind of wanted a fawn Marshall. The fawn colored Marshall.
Mm-hmm.
And Stack, he goes, I always thought that looked cool.
Yeah.
I go, can we get that? I like, no, that Tolex is like impossible. You can't get it. So no. Tolex is such a thing. It's like what's available.
Totally, man. It's just like tubes these days, right?
Yeah.
You take what you can get.
Well, you can't buy a big enough quantity to make it, have them make it custom for you. You have to be making a lot of product to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not like you're going to make, hey, I want this specific shade of red, like the old Marshall, and I want you to get it right, but we're only going to sell so many red amps. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, man, if you can't justify the quantity, no one can. That's right. For sure. All right, guys, hang on the line for a sec. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. I'll catch you later.
All right. See you guys.